Maryland Governor Martin O'Malley is describing the failure of a budget compromise in the state legislature as, quote, pretty much the low point of my experience here. That's a direct quote. He says he has no plans to call that special session until legislative leaders have a plan to avoid more than $500 million in cuts. Those cuts are set to take effect July 1st. And joining us in studio to talk more about this and much more is Maryland Democratic Governor Martin O'Malley. It's a pleasure, Governor. Thanks for being here today.
Allison, thank you.
So, strong words. It seems as though you were very disappointed in the failure of reaching some sort of a compromise by the stroke of midnight.
Well, the shame is this, for the last 4 or 5 very difficult years through a national recession, Maryland has been leading the way. We've been able to do tough things, come together even though we disagree, and take care of the people's business. I mean, it was not by chance but by choice that we built up what has been recognized 4 years in a row as the #1 public schools in America, that every year we made college more affordable rather than more expensive for families. And now we are ranked 9th among the 50 states in our rate of job creation. We've recovered 80% of the jobs we lost in the Bush recession. And by this failure to act this year in the legislature, we undermine all of those priorities. Those $500 million in cuts would mostly fall to rest on education. And the education of our children is really the core of what makes us such a strong state economically, a state where opportunities expand. So it's a shame, given what we were able to do, the other things this session, that we were able to manage. Redistricting, marriage equality, really solid things for the health of the Bay. But the legislature gridlocked on the final moments of the session, largely over a chestiness and very strong opinions over whether or not there should be a 6th site for gambling in the state of Maryland. And frankly, I think there's far more important issues like public education and public safety.
We've said in that introduction there that you don't plan to budge on calling that special session unless other things are put into place first. So what would it take for you to call this group back? What would it take for the people of Maryland?
Well, we need the consensus. I'm willing to call the legislature back in a half hour from now. We can do it as soon as we have a consensus. What happened at midnight, notwithstanding a lot of solid work and a lot of personal and one-on-one meetings leading up to that gridlock, was that there was no consensus. So we have 2 presiding officers. Both have very fixed and firm feelings about whether or not there should be a 6th site for gambling in the state of Maryland. And that, unfortunately, upset the consensus and the compromise that was there. So as soon as we have that consensus, we can come back into session. Is that tomorrow? Is that late August? That is something that the presiding officers and their members and I need to figure out.
How big of a sticking point was raising income tax on the high earners, the 6-figure earners? Well,
the approach that I submitted to the legislature would have asked for a small, slight capping of deductions for the 20% of us that are among the highest earners. The Senate took a different approach, a much broader increasing in income tax rate. The House leaned more towards the higher earners. All of those things could have been worked out. In fact, most of those things had been worked out. So what's gotten Maryland through these tough times better than other states is a balanced approach of both revenues and cuts. We're one of only 8 states that still has a AAA bond rating, Allison, and by any measure, whether it's job creation or education, we're a very strong state. We need to make sure we protect those strengths because the future is not a gift. It's not inevitable. It's something we have to build and make for ourselves.
Completely understood. Still, you could hear the groan when we thought about higher taxes. Is now the time, Governor, with people hurting? Why would you stand behind more taxes at this point when we're all sort of trying to dig in our back pockets for a little bit extra money?
Well, no one wants to pay more taxes ever for anything. One of the ideas that, one of the proposals that went by the wayside in this session was better funding for transportation through raising the gas tax for the first time since 1991. Now, there are no 2 words more unpopular that elicit more groans than the word tax combined with gas.
And agreed.
So, it's never a good time. For the last 3 years, we've balanced our budget entirely with cuts. 4 years ago, we had a special session, and we did ask citizens to pay a little more. I think it was a 1 penny increase in what was about the lowest sales tax in the country. But had we not done those things, we wouldn't have the #1 schools. We wouldn't be making college more affordable, and we would not be leading the nation out of this recession and into this jobs recovery. So these are the things that are required. You know, the gambling gimmicks, bake sales, bingos is not, you know, these are not the things that built our country. They're not the things that built a great state. We have to do what our parents and grandparents did, which is to make our state stronger, make our community stronger, so we give our kids better opportunities and better jobs than the ones we've had.
You had some successes.
We had a lot of good successes.
Okay.
Right up until the budget.
Right. the flush tax.
Right. We did some really strong things for the Bay. We'll be able to upgrade our wastewater treatment plants in a much more timely fashion. That helps the waters of the Bay. Stormwater, being able to put that that damage into check. And the other one was septic legislation that would prevent the mass sort of proliferation of giant septic housing developments on farmlands, woodlands, wetlands. We also repealed the death tax on working family farms so that no family has to sell the farm in order to pay the transfer taxes if a family member dies, and in order to pass on that farm in a continuing operation. So we did some good things. The other good one we did, we're #1, Allison, in terms of the amount of research that goes on in labs throughout Maryland, but we have not done as well as we could do in commercializing those ideas and getting them into our economy to create new jobs and startups. So this year we passed the Maryland Innovation Initiative that will pull together our higher educational institutions and with the goal of pushing 40 ideas every year out of the labs and into job creation.
Let me ask you, I got another quick question for you before I ask you something that's a little lighter. If we said it in the introduction, if we don't make a move, we might be hurting come this summer, the state of Maryland. Where do you see us, I guess, moving forward if we cannot come to some sort of a compromise? Will we really feel a difference?
Well, what's happening right now is there is a rhythm and a timing to everything we do together as a people through our layers of these common platforms called our state and county governments. And so now all of the county executives like Leggett, Rusher and Baker, and their school boards are all preparing their budgets, because usually by this time the legislature in Annapolis has done their job. So now what they will have to do is prepare budgets that have to incorporate about $500 million in cuts. Many of those cuts will come in the form of education cuts, also local police aid grants. And it's a shame, not only do we have the #1 schools, we've driven violent crime down to a 30-year low. In Prince George's County, where all we talked about 6 years ago was auto theft, auto thefts, auto thefts, we've turned that around, and now we've achieved about a 60-70% reduction in auto thefts. These things happen because we choose to make them happen, because we invest in making them happen. So if we can't resolve this by July 1st, the new budget comes into effect, and all of us will have to incorporate those cuts. We will have to cut on top of the $800 million that we cut when the budget was submitted. We're going to have to go back and cut additional dollars, hundreds of millions, including higher education. You know, the other thing that happens is tomorrow, the regents for the University of Maryland that had planned on an only 3% increase in college tuition will now have to consider whether to do a 10 or 13% increase in college tuition. There are consequences for action. There are consequences for inaction. In Maryland, we've been the beneficiaries of taking the right actions and the strong actions for a better future. Right now, we're in danger of suffering the consequences from the legislature's inaction. And the inaction was a failure to put forward and to pass a balanced approach, a product of compromise, none of them exactly the budgets that many of us would have hoped at the outset, but nonetheless ones that protected the priorities of public education, affordable college, job creation. The other important thing we did finally, though, on the capital budget. There is an operating budget where they gridlocked and failed, but on the capital budget, there is actually, because of our AAA bond rating, we will be doing a lot of school construction and renovation, and so particularly important for our building trades in this Maryland's economy will be the efforts on infrastructure, water, wastewater, schools, and other things. So about 50,000 jobs supported in that.
Let's end on a high note. Also, we hope the Nats win today. A little birdie told me you'll be there.
I will. I'm going to stop by for opening day at the Nats.
Well, we appreciate you coming by here first.
Allison,
thank you so much.
You.
Okay.
The Fox 5 Weather app. Look 10 days ahead or hour by hour. View today's video forecast and radar that can pinpoint your neighborhood free at your App Store or Android Market.